All right, so here we go. What are the main theories and solutions for income inequality from the economic perspective? We'll be thinking about this in two parts. There are many different ways to split this. We could talk about global inequality, we could talk about within country, between country, we could talk about inequality over time. We're focusing on U.S. inequality within the country. And we're focusing on individual inequality. So what makes an individual economically successful or not? So we're all working with narratives and models that we've grown up with about economic success and failure. Let's look first at the individual level and see what the data says and see what economists have to say. Let's look first at internal, or we might say endogenous, reasons for success or failure, reasons within a person, perhaps under their control. And with all of these, if it's interesting to you, you should go definitely read a lot more about it. There is this idea of culture of poverty. Some even presidents recently, like President Obama, have been accused of using this culture of poverty. The current U.S. president has also talked about the culture of poverty. For instance, there's a flawed character that you get if you happen to grow up in the inner city. This is an idea of something that is either within your control or within your culture and your environment's control, your family, your ethnicity, etc. You have a flawed culture, so to speak. A theory that's been around since probably people started thinking about poverty is this really old one, that it's about differences in effort, either inherent or learned, and that most of poverty or lack of economic success can be explained by laziness. And so if you adhere to these narratives, you might want to disincentivize laziness, make any welfare or social benefits contingent on working, training, or actively looking for work. Examples include the Earned Income Tax Credit, or the EITC, which gives tax refunds basically to low-income working Americans, so rewarding work. And the 1996 Welfare Reform Act cut a lot of money out of welfare. The Clinton and Newt Gingrich reached across the aisle to each other and pledged to end welfare as we know it. And so they put severe limits on how long you could be eligible for welfare over your lifetime or in any given stint. And a lot of the reason for the timing of that was that especially Republicans were still using the directly descended arguments from Ronald Reagan about welfare queens and about people really abusing the welfare system. It was a very big sort of ad push in the 1980s by Reagan and the Republicans to characterize welfare recipients a certain way. And mostly that's lazy. Modern analysis is that it's pretty much a discarded idea, but it is useful politically, and so we see it sort of maintain its robustness and use by politicians. It's a very simple, nice explanation, especially for people that otherwise don't want to have higher taxes or any sort of redistribution. It is difficult, however, to disprove it, and it's difficult to prove it, right? Because in any given recession, say you hit a 2020 COVID-19 recession and unemployment's reaching 20%, how do you know if the people without jobs are lazy or just can't find a job? It's difficult to sort of prove and know what's going on inside people's heads. What of the counter-arguments? Some of the more interesting counter-arguments can be found in the field of behavioral economics. And here are three wonderful books that if you're thinking of reading something in behavioral economics, or this, basically it's this field of economics that marries psychology with economics. It's pretty new. This one would be the one I would start with, Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. He won the Nobel Prize in economics for his theories. A very readable book. He's the father, basically, of behavioral economics. His student, Richard Thaler, writes a good applied version of how you do policy based on behavioral economics. Dan Ariely has some really nice TED Talks if you're interested in sort of shorter bites of the stuff. Basically, behavioral economics is a whole field that is very interesting and does a lot of work towards poverty and explaining success and lack thereof. For instance, a simple question, should I go in the ocean today, can be broken down by by behavioral economics into sort of, all right, are you going to be rational about this? What are the costs and benefits? That's what the economist would ask you to think about, or believes that you'll be thinking about. The behavioral economist knows that along with that rational stuff, there's also a lot of other stuff. It's a complex decision to pull up all the costs and benefits of any decision at any given time. And so you call upon all available data, and that might be the fact that you yesterday saw in the news that there was a shark attack at a beach nearby, and so you are now fearful of going in the water. You don't use all available information. You use just that which you can recall quickly. So you are limited in your ability to do the best for yourself and to be rationally self-interested. Some of the behavioral economics that's most salient to our topics are to be found in the book Scarcity and the Scarcity Research. So that's why we are linking to that in our reading material. And a little teaser, what's going on is that they find these very well-known behavioral economists find that our decision-making is very contextual and it can change based on context. Specifically, under their research, whether we are feeling poor in time or calories or money, we can actually see our decision-making change under different constraints. Same person, different time periods, feeling more scarcity or less scarcity, you're going to have different choices. And now we move on to external or exogenous, outside a person, reasons for economic success or failure. Certainly in the era of slavery, or even afterwards, for instance in the Jim Crow South, it's very clear that individuals will face restricted opportunity, not of their own choosing. In the 1960s, it's clear that ethnicity can limit opportunity. Kids don't choose where they go to school, and some districts get a lot more money than other districts. Recently, it was reported that the school system in the U.S. is more racially segregated than at any time, even during segregation. Access to credit in the U.S. has often had gender and racial components, not to mention family wealth. So for whom is it easier to get a small business loan to start your dream of your entrepreneurial venture? Female, black, poor? Probably not. Certainly wealth is more unequally distributed than income, and this matters. How about social networks? Available to some, not to others. As humans, we typically downplay the role of luck in our lives. It's just pretty uncomfortable to think about. But bad luck certainly is not distributed equally. So for all of these reasons that an individual may or may not be in control of all her economic success, some policy recommendations, and this is just a partial list, are more education funding, anti-discrimination policies, equal housing laws, progressive income taxes where higher incomes are charged higher income tax rates, wealth taxes, social insurance programs, income transfers like SNAP or food stamps, housing vouchers, and many, many more. In fact, this theory of economic success and failure, the restricted opportunity model, is the mainstream workhorse model. Now remember, there's also this theory that it's flawed government policies that are to blame, the Big Brother theory. And the story is something like problems in the way that the policy is made or is implemented will skew people's incentives and make them work less hard, and therefore they'll be more poor. So the policy recommendations would go along the lines of either limiting programs so there just aren't as many problematic programs, or to fix the perverse incentives in existing programs. There was a time when at certain income levels you would face 100% tax on your income should you be a working poor person that was receiving some benefits from the state. Your benefits would be reduced by $200 if you went to work and got a $200 check. So that rational, self-interested person would choose not to work in that case, right? So that's a perverse incentive. By and large, all of those have been fixed. We've been making programs now for quite a long time. Another solution is to institute public-private partnerships for welfare programs. Many of these have been done. There are lots of problems with them: corruption, leakages, lack of oversight, whatnot. They're not the magic bullet. So we'd say quick analysis, this is legit, it holds some merit, but it's probably limited in application. The majority of programs at this point do not suffer from massive Big Brother problems.